And we're back, my fellow enthusiasts. After a short break because my real life just got crazy, here we are with some educational goodness, MOO-U on cannabinoids. In my last video, I did a short little PSA saying THC percent doesn't matter. And while yes, I heard a lot of you guys in the comments saying that, yeah, it matters, well, okay. Sure, something with 2% THC is going to be a little less mentally changing than something with 20% THC. So on that level, yes, it does matter, and a higher THC percentage is going to give you that high mental change, but it doesn't have that big of an importance that our community has been placing on it as of late, especially when it becomes such a misleading number, and also the fact that it doesn't really dictate how good the flower or rosin is. So let's dive into it and let's talk about all the things cannabinoids and why THC percentage is but a small part in a huge variety of different things that come together to give us the perfect effect that we all looked for in cannabis. So quick overview. There are two main components that are going to really affect the effects that you get out of the material that you're using. And those are cannabinoids and terpenes. There are over 400 different terpenes that you can find. And that is what's really going to lean into how the flower tastes and the effects that you're going to get out of that strain. And while cannabinoids are found in every single strain and every single flower will all have the cannabinoids, terpenes are strain specific, and you will only find certain terpenes in certain strains. And even sometimes when a strain is grown differently, the terpenes can vary within that strain. So out of those 400 terpenes, again, we're down to 6 that scientists have identified that have an effect on effects. So we'll really deep dive into that into another video because that's a whole topic within itself. But no, while the THC percent is really what's gonna boost that high feeling, the effects you feel while you're high is all gonna come from the terpenes. So whether that's giggly, hungry, relaxed, loving, all of those things are all gonna become from the terpenes. And to even complicate the situation further, both of these things affect everybody differently. Your brain chemistry plays such a big part in all of this that just because some terpenes and cannabinoid percentages work for me doesn't mean that you will get the same exact effects mentally from that same combination. So that's why this stuff is so important. And really, we should be pushing dispensaries and makers to put more emphasis on these topics over just blatantly saying something with 30% THC is good, because that's not always the case. For right now, we're just going to concentrate on cannabinoids. Most of you know THC is a cannabinoid, but what a lot of you don't know is that there are actually over 100 different cannabinoids that make up the materials that we like. And out of those cannabinoids, there's 6 that really make a big difference. So when you're going to shop for flower or other things, really we want to be looking at the total active cannabinoids, because the higher the total active cannabinoid percentage is, that is really where you're going to get not only a lot of those mental effects, but those medicinal benefits that so many of us look for when using this stuff. When you look at packages and you see something that says TAC percent, that's what it's talking about, is the total active cannabinoids. So while we have several different active cannabinoids, that high feeling is really going to come from the THC percent level. To a certain extent, we should pay attention to it, because for somebody that's more sensitive to THC or somebody that doesn't want any of those psychoactive effects, they're going to want a really low percentage. But once we get past the 20-30% mark, it gets really fuzzy on how much it matters. Out of the 100 discovered active cannabinoids that we've found inside of flower and the materials that we use, these 6 are the ones that play the biggest roles in effects. On the left here, we have THC, CBN, and CBDL. These ones are going to be the psychoactive cannabinoids, and the ones that you'll feel the most with head change. On this side, we have CBD, CBG, and CBC. These are the non-psychoactive cannabinoids and really the ones that you will feel the most in your body, and where you get a lot of the medical benefits will be coming from this side of the spectrum. And I know there's been a lot of argument back and forth on whether the entourage effect is real and if you need these things to work together, and whether it's just me and experience or the people that I've talked to. I would say that the entourage effect is 100% real, and that you really need to consume and have an equal balance of all these things if you're trying to have a big medical benefit and not only just looking for the head change. If you're looking for the head change and just trying to escape reality for a little bit, well, then these things are really what's for you. The THC one, that's where you're going to get that really noticeable high feeling, and the CBN, that's just sleepy time. So this is really where you're going to feel a lot of it in your head. For those of us that need a well-balanced diet and are looking for those medical benefits, you want to balance the THC and the CBD 1-to-1, or even sometimes in the favor of CBD if you're really just looking for those medical benefits with very little psychoactive feeling. If you want to do it throughout the day and have to really handle life at its fullest. And that's one of the reasons why I really like vaporizing my flower, is because when it comes to cannabinoids, you can control what cannabinoids you consume by controlling the temperature. Certain cannabinoids have different boiling points, so you can get to the THC without ever seeing the CBN. And it makes for a really great experience. When you experience those low-end cannabinoids, it makes it for a really different head change. And that's one of the really cool things and why I use vaporizers when thinking about cannabinoids. Let's talk about the big thing here, THC, because that's what everybody's attention is always focused on. And they all say, oh, the bigger the THC percentage, the better it's gotta be. That's not true for a couple different reasons. Number one, the higher the THC percentage is, the lower percentage you have of all these other things. So while you'll get that really high psychoactive feeling from THC, you're not going to feel it as much in your body because you need those other things to make it work. So it's going to be a very different effect. And that's what happens when you smoke things like resin or rosin that's like 87 plus THC percent. You're going to get this really crazy head change that's all it's going to provide. Then you have the fact that the THC percent, while yes, it will kind of give you a gauge on how strong it's going to be, it's not going to give you a good full picture of what the effects are going to be, because a 30% THC with a very low terpene count isn't going to feel as effective as something with a lower THC and a high terpene count, because the terpenes is what's going to be the driver of effects. Last up, THC percent doesn't mean good quality. Just because something is bred to have a high THC percent, it can be mediocre flower. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. THC percent and testing and quality. Let's talk about that a little bit. I wish it wasn't this way, and it really shouldn't be this way, and hopefully in the future it won't be this way. But for right now, the testing systems that dispensaries use, even on the state level, is a little broken. And here's why. Because you have good old Farmer Moo here, and he's got his big crop of plants. And what will happen is the state will come to him, or someone will come to him and be like, hey, we need to test your flower. We need to say and put on the labels what percentage of terpenes and all of that other stuff has. So what the testing department will do is come get a sample from Farmer Moo. So what Farmer Moo will do is he will choose one special plant, and he will take that plant and sometimes even put that plant in a different room, or he will take that plant and put it in a different tray. And now this plant gets all the love. He's measuring with a test tube all of the nutrients and making sure this plant is seeing a lot of special care, making sure the lights are right. Where all these plants, they're getting fed from a flood system, or they're getting just watered and nutriated in mass. This one might get a little more nutrients, this one might get a little less, this one might get kind of like a middle ground, and it's just different throughout the harvest because they're not measuring every single little plant. They're just filling buckets and giving the plants food. And then they'll take this one plant that's going to be the tester plant, and they'll give this the right amount of nutrients, the right amount of light. They'll sing it, Taylor Swift songs and play opera for it. You know, who knows what they're doing to make this plant feel all the love. And then that's the plant that they give to the testing facilities. And not only that, but they'll take the best colas and buds off of this plant, the biggest, best looking ones, and they'll give that to the testing facility. So the testing facility is seeing the best of the best of the best of the grow and not really getting an average of what the grow is. So this plant might come back and say that this strain and this grow saw, 27% THC. But really, once you average out all of the plants, and now you're only seeing, an average of 24% THC. While it's a good barometer of kind of where we're at with the flower, it's not necessarily always truthful. Then THC percent, they've slapped this all over. 30% THC sounds great, wonderful, we love it. But what happens if this whole farm has 30% THC and was grown with crazy pesticides and chemical nutrients and all of these other things, or, grown outside? And so it's a bigger plant, yields more, and maybe they grew this one inside. So there's all sorts of variables that can lead to a very misleading THC percent. You don't really get unbiased results from this. Not only that, what they'll do is they'll take the colas from this plant, and then they'll have another special plant that they'll have, and another special plant. And then this one will go to testing facility A, this one will go to B, and this one will go to C. And then what they'll do is they'll take whatever highest number they get. So maybe this one said 24, this one said 26, oh, and this one magically somehow came back as 30. They're of course going to take that 30 number, slap it all over the jars, and call it good, when that's not really the case. And then you have the situation like I was just alluding to where, someone like MedMen or a big commercial grow will use pesticides or chemical nutrients, and that'll test out as 30. And then you have Farmer Moo over here, who's a small batch grower doing living soil organics and is testing at 25. Well, who's going to be better, right? That's hard to say. You'd really have to see the terpene count, the total active cannabinoids, and really just the quality of the flower. Even when you get through all that and you've grown the flower perfectly, Farmer Moo might be better at curing than MedMen. And that is going to be another big challenge of the effects of when the flower was tested. At what point in the cure process was the flower tested? And at what point did you get it? And there are just too many variables in testing at this moment to really solely rely on THC percent. And that's why I say, as far as numbers go, THC percent really doesn't matter. And you should be looking at all these other things to get a good barometer. And at the end of the day, the grower that you go to and the brands that you support and the people that you look into to provide your materials is really what's going to matter most. And supporting these small-time farmers who put love and care into their flower is always going to be better quality and better for you than some 30% stuff that's mass-produced and you find at a dispensary. Well, I hope that wasn't too much for you guys. Stay tuned for next week. Till then, stay lifted, stay educated. See you next time. Psst. Come hang out with us on Discord. Keep an eye out for some merchandise coming to an internet near you.